First world problems.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Today is Wednesday, October 5th. This is our regular town council meeting. Call this meeting to order, and if you'll join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. A couple of housekeeping notes. We are short the town clerk today. So for votes, I'm going to be taking them, and we'll probably do show of hands, and I will call out just if I make a mistake, please advise me, as I'm sure you all will. And similarly with roll call, I'll let the record show that all counselors are present in person. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak to any items that are not on the agenda this evening? If so, please feel free to come up to the podium, state your name and address, or raise your hand if you're online. You are allowed to raise your hand either way.
Hi, my name's Kelly Kuznarek. I live in Scarborough at the Oaks, which is on 114. And I'm just here to comment a little bit about the election that's coming up. I don't normally attend these meetings, hardly at all, except for the one where there was a discussion about the Comfort Inn. And we have experienced the same situation in our neighborhood at the Oaks, so I was just curious. However, I'm here today to talk about the major event coming up in our country next month. This event is extremely important to all of us if we care about the direction our country is going in right now. We need to change the course in which our country is going, and it seems the only way to do this is at the ballot box. I wouldn't be here today talking to you if it wasn't for something that happened to me about 2.5 years ago. A family member, retired military, wanted to inform my husband and I about a few things that were going on in our country that we didn't know about. And we were mainstream media folks. And after spending a couple of weeks together that summer, I guess he could tell. Since that time, which was right before the pandemic, I did a lot of research. And I guess you could say, what you call pretty far down the rabbit hole. But right now, I want to stay focused on our government in this country. My trust for this government, our federal government, is pretty much at zero. And if you stop and think about everything our country has been going through in the past 1.5 years, you really should be pretty angry, and your trust should be about zero too. The corruption started long before what we are experiencing now. But I am glad I'm an informed American. The mainstream media does no such thing. I can tell right off who the mainstreamers are, but I don't interfere. I wish them luck. But I worry about this election for the state of Maine and for the rest of the country. If we decide to vote for what we already have, it will be like getting in a car and driving off the cliff. If you think there are problems now, the problems we have now will intensify. The problem with America is that we are so caught up in our lives with working and paying bills that we are just assuming all is well. And this period we are going through is just a bump in the road. And don't worry, everything will get back to normal. There's a term for people who think like this, that everything is okay and they're going to accept what the government tells them and believe everything the government tells them. It's cognitive dissonance. It happens to the best of us until somebody has the guts to come along and shake you awake. So if you think you're experiencing this, just stop and think about the future of your family, your kids, and their kids. There is a big mess going on right now that has been created by the very people we trusted in our government. And now we need to vote for the right people to clean up that mess. So hopefully let's all do the right thing for our country and for the state of Maine. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other members of the public that would like to speak to items that are not on tonight's agenda? Please. Just state your name and address and what you'd like to share with us.
My name is Charles Spanger, 99 Beach Ridge Road, Scarborough. And I don't think this is the place for a long political speech, highly ideological. It's a town council meeting. We're supposed to speak to things about the town. So, and I totally disagree with whatever the woman said.
Thank you, sir. Seeing no further public comment, we'll move on to item 5, which is accepting the minutes from our last meeting. We actually have to defer this item as the minutes have not been prepared yet. So we'll move this to our next meeting. Item 6 is adjustments to the agenda. I'm going to motion to move orders number 22-099 and 22-100 to follow order number 22-091. These are all related topics. I thought the discussion might flow into one another. Second. And is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. And it's unanimous. Thank you. Next is the treasurer's warrants. I signed those before this evening's meeting, and we'll move on to the town manager's report. Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Right at the beginning, I want to just take a moment to recognize the passing of one of our longtime employees. Kim Spurlick was a 21-year employee with the town, started with Public Works for a couple of years, and then 19 years supporting the detective division in the police department. Kim was just a bright light, is the best way I could describe it. Her public safety family honored her well all the way through. I've had the occasion to hear from the family, very appreciative for the amount of support and love provided to the family. This afternoon, she was buried down at the Scarborough Memorial off Blue Point Cemetery, very well attended ceremony, but just a sad day and so young. She was only 51, so she'll be missed. On a lighter note, I'm pleased to announce I've kind of hinted at this for a couple of weeks. Our new Public Works Director, Doug Howard, will be starting next Monday, October 10th. Doug comes to us with a tremendous amount of experience right in our backyard, if you will. Doug started at the South Portland Public Works Department, worked his way all the way up through, and in the last 10 years, he was the Public Works Director of South Portland. He did a brief stint in SACO doing fleet supervision and GIS work. So he really comes with a wealth of knowledge from on-the-ground operations to certainly the management function. So extremely pleased to have Doug on board. And I'll be pleased to introduce him at your next meeting. Also want to certainly recognize Ruth Porter. Ruth will be retiring tomorrow, 42 years with the town. She reminded me that when she started in 1980, the municipal budget was $8 million. And I'm sure a lot less complicated than it is today. I'm really, quite honestly, a bit fearful just in terms of how much she knows. She has personally touched and managed so many aspects of this organization. In true Ruth form, she certainly will be available to us as we go forward. And so we'll be celebrating her time tomorrow. The chairman and myself will present her proclamation, just recognizing her contributions to the town. Then just a few housekeeping items. Absentee ballots. The town clerk's office has been very busy. They processed over 1,500 absentee ballot requests. And as of close of business today, about 1,200 of those have been mailed out and some are starting to trickle back in. And as of today, we've started, you can actually cast your ballot here at Town Hall. This week we'll be in the clerk's office and then we'll move to the back of this room in Chamber B until just a few days before election. I also want to just give you a quick update on the Cliff Walk. I don't believe we've talked about the incident that occurred back on September 19th in these chambers. It was a tragic event that resulted in the fatality of a guest to our town. By all accounts, just a tragic accident. Worth noting, it's the second fatality in 8 months, totally unrelated for totally different reasons, but worth noting. I have been in conversation with the Prutt's Neck Improvement Association that's responsible for maintenance of that path. They closed it immediately and it remains closed as we sit here tonight. I will be sending them a formal request that they reopen it to the public. And they seem receptive to that. I believe they'll be meeting in the next week or so to make some decisions in that regard. So those conversations are ongoing, and perhaps the council will convene and talk privately in more length about the matter as well. And lastly, just a quick update. I believe 4 of the councilors here today at one point or another stopped into a site walk down at Avenue 2 last week. This was arranged at Councilor Hamill's request, Councilor Seither and Katerina, and I think I saw a glimpse of Councilor McGee. Didn't stay for long, with a number of interested parties and one of the abutters, really just to understand what's going forward and just to give the public a little recollection. About 3 years ago, the town was approached to discontinue an old street that really served no public purpose other than certainly I shouldn't say a public purpose, not for a road, but really for access to the beach, and that should not be diminished by any stretch. The town ultimately did discontinue that street, and what happens in that event is that 50-foot right of way reverts to the abutters half width, so 25 feet to each side. And in return, we received a 10-foot easement back down the center line of that right of way. And the trail or the path is to be reconstructed and relocated into that 10-foot easement. So our town engineer is kind of my technical eyes and ears, working with the state agencies that require permits, and that work is ongoing. I suspect in 2 weeks we'll have further updates, but pleased to see such a good showing by members of council. Thank you.
Any questions for Tom? Seeing none, I did want to, we didn't want to put this on the agenda, but I do want it entered into the record. As Tom alluded to, we did sign a proclamation earlier today recognizing Ruth Porter, and I just wanted to read it for everybody because I think it's deserving. So be it resolved by the council of the town of Scarborough, Maine, and town council assembled that whereas from time to time, certain individuals who work for the town of Scarborough that become synonymous with what it means to work for our local government. And whereas Ruth D. Porter began employment with the town of Scarborough on July 28th, 1980, culminating in a long and distinguished career in finance. And whereas after more than 42 years with the town, she will be stepping down from her role as finance director to retire. And whereas she has displayed exceptional professional ability as finance director during her tenure with the town of Scarborough, she has led the finance department through many changes and developments. Her tireless dedication, generosity of spirit, and extraordinary work ethic have brought stability to the department's financial operations. She has been known to burn the midnight oil as the last person to leave town hall on many nights. And whereas Ruth's directional oversight led the town of Scarborough to receive the annual comprehensive financial, the CAFR from the Government Finance Officers Association as part of their certificate of achievement for excellence in financial reporting, the prestigious honor has been awarded each consecutive year since 2005. And whereas over the years, Ruth held the roles of tax collector and treasurer, she oversaw many changes during her tenure in Scarborough. She put together the first computerized financial management system and had a lead role in updating the computerized accounting systems, Gemini and now Munis from Tyler Technologies. Now therefore be it resolved by the Scarborough Town Council and Town Council assembled that the town of Scarborough does hereby recognize retiring finance director Ruth D. Porter for serving the town of Scarborough for 42 years. We would like to thank Ruth for her faithful service to the town and oversight for its citizens and extend to Ruth and her family our best wishes for many years of happiness in the future. Signed and sealed this 5th day of October, 2022 on behalf of the Scarborough Town Council of Scarborough, Maine. So congratulations to you.
Very good. Mr. Chairman, I should have mentioned this. This is just an example of her long tenure. Through Ruth's time with the town, she survived through 3 different planners, 6 different assessors, 3 community service directors, 5 fire chiefs, 4 police chiefs, 3 public works directors, and 7 business managers at school, and I think 3 town managers. So she is certainly a survivor.
The definition of resilient. Very good. Order number 22-085 is a 7 p.m. public hearing and second reading on the proposed amendments to Chapter 405C, the Scarborough Shoreline Zoning Ordinance. Are there any members of, well, first we'll introduce it.
I think
Do we have-
Brian Logstaff is with us, if you'd like, and then
Brian, would you like to give us a a refresher on this? I know it's been before us a few times.
Sure, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Ken, thank you.
Great. Yep. So the background on this is that for since 2015, when the state Maine DEP shoreline zoning guidelines for municipal shoreline zoning ordinances came out, they came up with a way to deal with the non-conforming structures. Those are the structures that existed long before the ordinance was in place that were 75 feet or less from the highest annual tide line on the coastal in our town, and the highest annual tide line. They limited them to 20 feet in height. And subsequently, of course, as you all know, we're going to be facing a new set of flood maps that raise the base flood elevation by as much as 5 feet in some areas. And so when someone wants to improve their structure by 50% of the current market value of the structure, they are required to do what's called substantial improvement, which means they need to elevate their structure to meet that base flood elevation. And the shoreline zoning guidelines did not provide any guidance as to what you do with a structure that's already 20 feet or perhaps 18 feet high that has to be elevated by 5 feet or more, or 3 or 4 feet or more. And so we engaged our state senator, Stacy Brunner, state coordinator, floodplain coordinator, Sue Baker, and the Maine DEP staff. And we, through a few meetings, came up with some language that culminated in the legislation LD 1809, an act to allow exceptions to the height limitations under shoreline zoning laws. And that was signed into law on March 16th. It became effective on August 8th. And so this proposed amendment is to be able to amend our shoreline zoning ordinance to adopt that language that now allows that measurement in height to be taken from the bottom of the sill of the structure instead of the mean average grade at the low side of the structure. So what that means is if you're required to elevate your structure to meet floodplain requirements, you're no longer going to be penalized if you have a 20-foot tall structure already. You're allowed to keep that 20-foot tall structure and elevate it those 3, 4, 5 feet, whatever the shoreline, the floodplain ordinance requires. So this is really some housekeeping that was brought about by some recent legislation. There's also a slight amendment in there to bring us up to speed with the state guidelines that a few years ago adopted the requirement to take photos of before and after any shoreline stabilization or vegetation removal to make sure that we were keeping the vegetation in place in those critical buffer areas in the shoreline zone. So that in a nutshell is what this proposal is about. I think it's a good thing. We certainly have a lot of structures along Shipwreck and Jones Creek that would probably become subject to this and need this kind of relief on that height limitation. And it's only for non-conforming structures. Anything that's conforming is still limited to the 35 feet in height as it's always been.
Thank you for that. Are there any questions for Brian? Are there any members of the public that would like to speak to this item? And that's Brian's hand that's up, right? Okay. Seeing no public comment, I'll close this public hearing. And do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand and let the record show it's unanimous. Thank you. Order number 22-0911 is a 7 p.m. public hearing and second reading on the proposed amendments to Chapter 413, the Town of Scarborough Growth Management Ordinance. I can introduce this one. I, at our last meeting, brought forward some proposed amendments to our growth management ordinance that it did two things. We had some exemptions for 1-bedroom units in there when we passed the ordinance. Those are set to expire at the end of next year. There's some remaining, there's 25 or so remaining. But I propose replenishing those. So we would add 100 units to that exemption pool. And also, when we passed the ordinance, we added 104 units for the Crossroads Plan Development District. And I'm proposing to add 289 units to that exemption pool. And Liam, if you could bring up the map of the packet, I think I'll give a little further explanation. So we've been working through the course of the year with the primary developer of within the Crossroads District to understand, the types of development that they want to pursue in the coming years and what we're willing to allow. And I think this latest proposal by the developer is outlined on the map here. They're looking to add 45 units at Hackamore Place, 222 units within the town center phase 1, which is the blue highlighted areas on the map. And then there's 22 units that are within the innovation district. And they have a expected build out plan, which is in the left corner here, that if you could just scroll a little bit to the left, I'll read that as well. So we don't expect any units to come into play this year, although some permits may be pulled. We expect 67 next year, 110 to 120 in 2024, another 100 to 110 in 2025. So these are the general basis for the 289 unit number within the CPD district. With that, are there any questions that anybody has for me on the proposal? Okay. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak to this item? If so, please come up, state your name and address, and what you'd like to share with us.
Hi, Nina McKee, 309 Black Point Road. In my view, these amendments lack integrity. They are targeted to give preferential treatment to one developer, which is Crossroads Downs Development. The expiration dates on the amendments also benefit the developers. Number E, December 31st, 2,224, 100 units can be built. G, December 31st, 2225, 289 units can be built, which meets the Crossroads request for an exemption of 289 units within 3 years. As we all know, the GMO allows 44 units in 1 year. What about slow growth? What about rate of growth? What about fairness to all developers? Will other developers be limited to 44 units per year, which is now mandated by the GMO? I think it is outrageous to change the GMO to accommodate one developer. And what happens to all the developers in the pipeline? Are they limited to 44 units per year? Crossroads is dangling the carrots of a possible town center and school site in front of this council. Both of these carrots are not definite. They're not defined. Why should the council be held hostage to making preferential deals because of these dangling mystical promises? Growth is rapid and extensive. Both of these amendments accelerate that growth, to which residents are deeply opposed. So why is the council even considering these amendments? I believe the argument given to the council is, quote, we can't build a town center without building more units. I say tough. Who needs a Downs town center? Anyway, we already have one. In my view, I hope these amendments do not pass. They totally lack integrity. I hope the council can take a pause and concentrate on revising the GMO, getting rid of the 11 exemptions that are currently in the GMO, and refrain from favoring Crossroads. Please do not vote in favor of one development. I hope the results of the vote will be that the town council takes the high ground. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Matthias Case. I'm a ed tech here at Scarborough High School. I've lived at the Downs and rented out the Downs since 2009. I think I just really want to voice my strong support for the amendment to complete phase one of the town center. The town center would be a great addition to Scarborough and a much needed and desired alternative to Route 1, which does not feel remotely close to a downtown, never mind a community. While somewhat walkable, Route 1 isn't a pleasant experience because there are no bike routes and the sidewalks aren't even connected, so most of the time I drive. I look forward to being part of a neighborhood designed with a more pedestrian-friendly experience in mind, one within walking distance of amenities for errands, shopping, and fun. I'm most excited by the prospect of being part of a true community, instead of driving to isolated locations for all these things where I hardly recognize anyone. From what I've seen, there will truly be something for everyone in the Downs, no matter where you live in Scarborough. In terms of housing, the proposed downtown area is designed to satisfy a variety of budgets and needs, including affordable housing as discussed during last week's workshop. Last night, I just heard on the local news that a new housing project is being proposed for people with disabilities to be completed, I think, sometime in 2024. The diverse housing types have led to a vibrant neighborhood with neighbors in all stages and walks of life. The long-term plan and vision for downtown have been thoughtfully conceived. And I fear that if we miss this chance, we open ourselves up to a much worse scenario of unorganized urban sprawl somewhere down the line. We have a vision from a local family who are genuinely invested in the town, in this community, as many of the developers are also our neighbors. As a resident in the Downs since its inception, I can honestly say that this live, work, play philosophy that I alluded to is already being realized. A downtown would only enhance this feeling of community and benefit everyone. Therefore, I strongly encourage the town to embrace this fantastic opportunity to build a downtown that benefits everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name is JC Downs. I live on Bog Road. I moved here when I was 9, and I'm here tonight to voice support for the Downs and town center development. This project is providing critical housing for Greater Portland region that is affordable and caters to the hardworking middle class. Scarborough has always been a diverse community, and over the last several decades, it has become unaffordable for most. The Downs is one of the few developments in the region that is building affordable and workforce housing. And yet this council is resisting that, and it doesn't make sense to most of us. There's a false rhetoric circulating that Scarborough is growing out of control, but yet fewer than 100 housing units have been built all year. The Downs development has been given permission by the town of Scarborough to develop up to 2,000 housing units, and that cannot be done because this town council has placed a restriction on growth that is completely contradictory to the legal agreement with the Downs. So how does that make sense? Residents and myself deserve affordable housing. Let the Downs build what you said that they could. Not only will this solve a need in our community, but the benefits that come with it are increased tax value for the town of Scarborough, a major traffic improvement project, and a town center, which seems like a win-win-win to me. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Marvin Gates, 423 Black Point Road here in Scarborough. I do not oppose the order, except to respectfully suggest that you further amend as a part of it, the GMO, by striking its Section 7 administration F town council exemptions. And I brought some visual aids, and I promise not to take too long. These are the agendas from the 7 workshops and 1 meeting that you've held since last December. 250 some odd pages, every single one of them dedicated to the proposition of Section 7, the administration. And because I have no memory, the next letter is F, Town Council exemptions. If there is anything that you or anyone has ever proved over the course of the last year, is that I mean, it's barely 250 words and you have a page from every meeting, which means nothing. But I'm attempting to make a point that might elude you because you have your nose so close to the grindstone and attempting to develop Scarborough in the way that your vision, I may not share it, but the way your vision in your wisdom and in your authority provides you the opportunity to do. I think in the course of that, you have missed that, I suggest that you've missed that tomorrow, another town council exemption can reach your desk. And by precedent, you're going to be engaged in another long battle, fruitless battle that you've demonstrated is fruitless. I think I've made my point. And it only bears repeating that I would respectfully suggest that you strike 7F as a part of what you're doing tonight by further amending. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Randy Hogan, I'm in Ocean View Harbor in Scarborough. So this is about the exemption process that you put together. And over the last year plus, it's certainly been challenging. And I put in lots of countless hours and meetings into this process. And for that, I thank you. And in following the process, the exemption process, you made it clear that it was important to you that the public understood what the rules were and what the process was. You wanted the public to understand that you were taking this path to manage the pace of growth. As part of that, in July of 2022, Councillor Johnson authored an article. It's currently on the town's website. It's titled GMO Exemption Review Process for the Downs. He noted that he hoped to get as much resident involvement and input as possible during the public process for these exemption requests, and that this would include discussions that get to the public benefit, defining public benefit, what that is, and how it might apply in this case. And his article also noted that your planned meeting on September 7th was one that the council would offer input and suggestions on changes to the submitted request. So you laid out an exemption process and essentially made that promise. But you broke it on September 21st when you introduced something completely new. It was a surprise switch. Forget the exemption process and the supermajority vote that would accompany that. Let's go with an amendment to the ordinance with a simple majority vote. These past 2 weeks have been head spinning, frankly. I'm barely able to catch my breath at the speed with which you've been changing your own direction and rules. And for such a consequential decision, we, the public, would hope that you'd want us to track it with you. But it's been so fast that the minutes of your decisions from your last meeting haven't been posted yet. The local newspaper hasn't been able to catch up. This is the last one that we all received. It landed in our boxes the day after your workshop. So it reported your meeting, but then it was a day after your workshop. And then there was nothing about this change in the October 1st town e-newsletter. And engaged residents and voters who hear about this switch, they're stunned about it. We talk about the comprehensive plan and how this plays into it. And on managing the town's growth areas, it says, community input will remain a critical and necessary component of any future policy decisions. So at the beginning of last month, you all received a time-sensitive and thoughtful memo from two committees who collaborated over the summer to make recommendations to you as you followed your exemption process. Councilor Seither requested that you discuss this memo. You haven't, and you're putting this vote ahead of listening to these engaged residents and town volunteers. Scores of residents have attended Councilor Corner Live sessions to offer their thoughts and ideas about growth, public benefit, conservation, and sustainability. You haven't had a conversation as a council to address these public comments and recommendations. Are you hearing us? To go through so many months on one track and then change the entire approach in one meeting is unsettling. It lacks integrity. Many of us feel misled. The council is at serious risk of breaching trust with the public. And consider that that's a lot harder to fix than the exemption process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mel. We're going to go online. It looks like we've got a few folks with their hands up. Liam, could you? Well, we're not done in. Yeah, we're going to go online first, and then we'll come back to in person.
So Eamon, we're going to allow you to speak.
Eamon. Okay.
Good evening, councilors, Chair Cloutier, members of the council. My name is Eamon Dundon. I'm the Director of Advocacy at the Portland Regional Chamber. I wish I could have been there in person tonight. We have got a gubernatorial debate tomorrow morning. That has to be at 6 a.m. So that prevented me. But I did send a letter earlier this morning to all of you, and I won't rehash that all here. It was from our president and CEO, as well as our local affiliate, the Scarborough Community Chamber, and their president. But a few key points I did want to hit on. I think if we're going to think about the context of the decision before you tonight, we really have to go back to 2006. And that's where, of course, the Crossroads Mixed Use Development District, as it was called, was laid out in Scarborough's comprehensive plan at the time. And I just want to read one brief quote from that. Quote, development within the Crossroads District creates a variety of areas serving different purposes with different characters. The actual development pattern emerges as a result of cooperative planning between landowners and the community. A possible development scenario might include the following. At the core, the Crossroads is an efficient, concentrated, and dense neighborhood that includes community-scale retail and service uses, a variety of housing, including affordable housing, municipal and community services, and recreational facilities, as well as employment opportunities in businesses and professional offices and similar uses. The core of the Crossroads offers the possibility for creating a main street as part of the overall development. Now, a lot has changed since then, but I think the vision before you tonight that the developers of the Downs are articulating is very much in line with that document from 16 years ago. And if we look at the work that's occurred since then, and I would, sort of call out especially the hard work of this council, many of your expressed wills and visions for these parcels, of course, the 2021 comprehensive plan, the work of the Ad Hoc Downtown Development Committee, the Ad Hoc Community Center Advisory Committee, the Levine Strategies Report that you reviewed this past spring, a little more indirectly, but the Housing Alliance, who have been tireless advocates for the workforce and affordable housing we're seeing come to reality here, which will include this really exciting 3I development in this phase. All of that has been followed up on and included in the vision before you tonight. And I think that's rare to see in a comprehensive planning process where the description from 16 years ago so closely matches, what's before you tonight in 2022. So I think all of that is reason enough to support this. But on one other note, I just want to say it's really encouraging to see Scarborough moving in this direction. I deal a lot with development in the city of Portland, and it's become incredibly difficult in Portland to develop new and exciting uses such as this, for a variety of reasons, but they've really put a lot of regulations in place that make it very costly to build. And Scarborough hasn't been one of those communities. You have certain zoning considerations, of course, but you haven't taken a punitive approach to development, which has been great to see. And you're one of the few communities in this region that is moving in that direction. So I really want to encourage that. Not only is this a strong investment for our entire region, but it will enumerate directly to the citizens of Scarborough As property values continue to rise and mandatory municipal services continue to grow in cost, you really do need to be expanding that tax base and balancing the mix of uses. And I think that developers of the Downs have done just that with the proposal before you tonight. And so we would urge you on behalf of all our members in Scarborough and the region to approve this amendment to the GMO this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Let's go on.
Travis, and I allow you to speak.
Can you hear me?
We can.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members of the Town Council. My name is Travis Kennedy. I live at Beach Ridge Road. I was the chair of the Ad Hoc Downtown Development Committee, which the council established in 2020 and which worked for almost the entirety of 2021. I'm speaking in favor of this amendment. Our committee was charged by the council to work on plans for development of a town center, incorporating years of feedback from the community and formal expectations for a town center established by the town. Through our work, we helped the team at Crossroads design a town center with key features that meet the town's desires, including a denser residential development in designated growth areas and a walkable town center with public and private amenities. I support this amendment because it appears to be an important first step toward making that vision a reality. Development has been happening at the Downs for years, and it will continue to happen for years. But this is finally the fun stuff, the part that we've been looking forward to. Not only will this amendment kickstart the town center, but it will also ensure that the views of the council and the desires of the downtown committee and the citizens at large are still being incorporated in the Downs project. While it will absolutely allow some growth at a faster pace, it will also result in a larger number of smaller units, which will have a lesser impact on town services in the long run. I really want to take a moment to thank all of you, the developers, the council, the staff, for staying at the table over the course of the past year, and really longer than that, but really the past year, at least since our committee turned on recommendations, as your negotiations have been quite the roller coaster. But I do think that where you are at now is a smart and targeted solution that will get the town center that the community has asked for started, while keeping growth measured as the project proves itself over the next few years. So I want to thank you again, all of you, for your commitment to our town and for all of your hard work. I hope that you see fit to approve this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Why don't we come back in person for a little bit? Charles.
Once again, I'm Charles Spanger, 99 Beach Ridge Road. And I like the density of this project. I like the variety of housing, mixed income housing. I like the idea of the downtown. There's a lot that's really good about this, and I approve wholeheartedly. My problem is that there's sort of to do with the pace of this. I know it's been a long time in development, but and also the details of what we're trying to achieve here. If you've got all this housing, and very, very little attention is paid to the energy systems that are applied to this project. I think that's a travesty. This is 2022, and we all know, all of you know, I'm sure, because you're highly informed, that climate change is bearing down on us really hard. And I'm a member of the Conservation Commission. And I look at our job at the Conservation Commission as kind of absurd to do the piddly little things we do if we're going to allow climate change to just roar over our continents. So consider Pakistan right now. I think that I could give you an example. We could do this so much better. And maybe it's too late for this project because, given the process that just took place, it seems that there's no stopping it. But let's say there are going to be 800 units. And if they're well built, let's say the units are going to last 100 years. And so you multiply those two, you get 80,000 heating and cooling seasons. And let's say that if we use the solar house model that is recommended by the Sustainability Committee and is included in the memorandum that was submitted to you by the Sustainability Committee and the Conservation Commission with a whole host of recommendations as to how we can do development better. You get 800,000 units, 800,000 heating seasons, and all of them are going to emit far more energy than they, climate gases than they should. A solar house unit uses 50% less energy than the standard built, which is what is going to take place at the Downs. I haven't been by there for a while, but I haven't seen a single solar panel on the roofs over at the Downs. There is no provision for building a solar farm to electrify the Downs project or any part of it. I could be wrong, and I'd be happily be corrected, but I don't believe there is. And this is just unimpressive. And I would like us as members of the community and members of the governance community to try to make this Scarborough a town that we and our offspring will be proud of for a long time. Climate change is a really slow process, and it's always overlooked, and it's bearing down, and you're too smart to let that happen.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, members of the council. My name is Paul Lynette. I'm the founder and president of 3i Housing of Maine. I don't live in Scarborough. I live up 295 a bit, but I'm very excited about what we're at the precipice of bringing to this town and bringing to the region. We are focused as a nonprofit in developing affordable, accessible, energy efficient housing for people with physical disabilities, premised upon our 3 I's, that is independent living through innovative technology in an integrated community-based setting. Working along with our partners, the Preservation of Affordable Housing, a representative, I think you know him, Corey Fellows of POA is here. We've been impressed about the opportunity of being involved in a diverse town center area, one that our residents would like very much to be a part of in a mutual advantageous way. We've begun serious discussions on a particular site, and I can tell you that the outreach that we've gotten from members of the public has been significant. So I'm here as putting a face on this project. Love to come back with more details as they get further down the road. But in the meantime, we'd really urge you to approve this amendment to the GMO so that we can be one of the first communities as part of the Down Center taking shape here in Scarborough. And I thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, John Krasnick, 12 Evergreen Farms Road. Here tonight with a statement on behalf of the Scarborough Economic Development Corporation's Board of Directors. Our board is comprised solely of Scarborough residents from various professional backgrounds with the goal of supporting sustainable economic growth to lead to a more diverse and resilient local economy. The Scarborough Economic Development Corporation's Board of Directors supports the proposed changes to the Growth Management Ordinance that would allow the Downs and other multi-family projects to move forward. Speaking specifically to the Downs proposal, we understand that each party, the council and M&R Holdings, approached the development from different perspectives. However, we know that each party is wholly committed to making Scarborough a special place for our community of residents and businesses, and that the future of Scarborough matters to both parties. The council must manage our residents' real concerns about the impacts of growth. The developers must manage the community aspirations of having an exciting town center with the vagaries of an uncertain economy. And this compromise proposal recognizes both issues. It provides a predictable level of multifamily development in line with the Downs' original proposals. It also accomplishes their desire to provide a ready-made customer base within walking distance of the town center style development. In terms of managing growth, a critical factor for the members of the town council, this compromise is wholly different from the original proposal for an unlimited exemption for multifamily in the town center. M&R Holdings has withdrawn this request and has come forward with an honest effort to meet the concerns of the council regarding growth. This reduction in their request is the result of both parties having stayed at the table and focusing on the needs of Scarborough, predictable, managed growth, and a successful town center development. As members of the town's Economic Development Corporation and residents of the town of Scarborough, we believe in the vision described in the 2006 Comprehensive Plan and in the updated 2021 Comprehensive Plan. We are excited about the future of Scarborough. We are proud of the council and the developers for all their hard work in getting to this compromise. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Back on.
Denise, you should be able to speak.
Hi, Denise Hamilton, 167 Two Rod Road in Scarborough. I hate to sound like a broken record at the town council meetings regarding this GMO, but I've yet to hear any single town councilor tell the community, the citizens, the taxpayers of Scarborough, how our schools can accommodate the growth that's going on in Scarborough. And I also find it frustrating that we're looking at amending the GMO for a single developer when the exemption process is there to be used. So I would like to see the exemption process used, whether it's going to help or hurt. The fact that it does require supermajority will only hurt those who really, really want it that won't get it. But the exemption process should be used, not amending the GMO. And what is your input on how you're going to accommodate kids going to 8 corners coming from the Downs and the corner of Mussey and Gorham that are already filled? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We'll take another online.
Rita, you should be all set.
Rita, are you there? Okay, we'll come back to you. Is there anybody else in person that would like to speak? Please come on up.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, honorable town councilors, and Manager Hall. My name is Michael Foley, and I'm the current mayor of the city of Westbrook, having served my community for nearly 2 decades. It's an honor to be here in your community. It's an honor to also join you again in support of the Downs project this evening, as I did about 3 years ago. For those who were here, you will recall my message was this project will not only have a huge benefit to your community, but will also the region, as we've heard others speak to. I am pleased to see tremendous success in all areas surrounding the project, but wanted to point out one positive effect associated with Westbrook and share some thoughts on the future. When IDEX first reported they would be securing a site within the Innovation District, many were concerned this would negatively affect our community who hosts their worldwide corporate headquarters. This was very quickly met with relief for us, as this site afforded IDEX the ability to expand in a quick and efficient manner with the shovel-ready sites provided, while also allowing them to be within close proximity to their Westbrook site. This resulted in a win-win for everyone, and without the Downs, this would not have been possible. As a lifelong Westbrook resident, I have seen our two communities evolve and even more during the last 2 decades. Collectively, we have been working hard to increase housing opportunities as evidenced from census data to show our success. Since 2000, both Scarborough and Westbrook have grown housing units by 31%, while also seeing a population growth of 26% in Westbrook and 30% in Scarborough. This data shows us as Maine's fastest growing communities. Over the years, we both have made tactful zoning reforms to best support growth that best reflect our desires of the community, and the Downs is a perfect example. Those zoning reforms have been helpful as we work hard to address the simple supply and demand issue caused with our current housing shortage. We should be proud of these efforts and know there is more work to be done while we continue to be leaders on this front, meaning our two communities. Though this growth has been great for both of us, we have not seen the significant increased enrollments in our schools that both communities seem to fear. With data from the Maine Department of Education, we have actually seen a decline in school population during this period that I've described. We've seen our school enrollments in Westbrook decline by 13%, while we had population growth of 26%. And Scarborough's seen their school population decline by 12%, while their population has grown by 30%. This similar data also applies to other growing communities in southern Maine, such as Auburn and Gorham. The data just does not support the fears of increased school population. Lastly, I hope to share about the success about true partnership. Like here in Scarborough, Westbrook is a partner in a significant economic development project, Rock Row, with a TIF agreement similar to what you have here in Scarborough. This tool allows our communities to grow without adverse effect on our existing property tax base. And as I mentioned when I came here 3 years ago, shelters all of this new tax value from county tax, municipal revenue sharing, and aid to education. All areas that can bring huge value to us as our communities, which also allows for significant public benefit projects, such as your recently constructed public safety building. Like the success we have seen at the Downs, Rock Row achieved success beyond our expectations, but they didn't get there so quickly without our help and flexibility as elected officials in the city of Westbrook. The Rock Road development team isn't unlike the development team at the Downs. They are good people working to create something that serves and reflects the needs of their respective communities. And they're doing it with integrity and due diligence. In Westbrook, we see the value Rock Row is bringing to our community, and we collaboratively work together to achieve mutual benefit and success. And in Scarborough, I'd hope to see that same level of partnership with support and collaboration. I applaud the work thus far, and I encourage you to support the proposed changes this evening, but I hope you do not stop here. Working together as a team is much easier and more successful than any other approach. I encourage you to help them deliver on the amazing vision they have laid out for your community, and it's a win-win for everyone. If there's anything Westbrook can ever do to help you in your future planning, please let us know. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
My name is Jim Fitzpatrick, 8 Front Runner Way in the Downs. You heard me speak 2 weeks ago, so I'll be very brief tonight because I think the folks who talked in favor of this amendment hit the nail on the head. This is a terrific project. We couldn't be, my wife and I, she's here tonight, could not be happier that we moved here. I just want to comment on this Downs project update. Very impressive, very, very impressive. Particularly to note that it wasn't just the developer who was involved in this. It was you folks. It was the planning group, the planning commission, the zoning board. Everybody, every town official or every town organization seemed to be involved in this project. And that is really great to hear for me. I just got a copy of this a couple of days ago, and I wish everybody in this room had a copy and read this. It's 86 pages, but I got to tell you, the work that went into this is amazing. And the gentleman who just spoke, the mayor, Westbrook, he hit the nail on the head. It takes cooperation in order to see good growth, positive growth in any community. You need to have collaborative work. You need the developer working with the town officials. And boy, I'll tell you folks, if you read this, you're going to find that this really is one great piece of work. So we're in support of it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Let's try online one more time.
Rita, if you unmute yourself. Yep.
Are you there, Rita? Okay. Anybody else in person that would like to add public comment? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. And do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Before we go straight into discussion, Councilor Anderson and I did work on a series of amendments that I'd like to introduce first, so that we can just focus our discussion on, I think, something that is a little better starting place. Could you bring that up? Maybe magnify it a little. John, do you want to introduce her? You want?
Yeah, I can walk through the three that we have up here. So some of this came from our workshop last week, I think, when we were having the conversation about the amendment. So the first one is really just trying to ensure that as we allow those 100 dwelling units to grow outside of the CPD, that we're trying to direct those to our growth areas designated in our comprehensive plan. So again, this is really the attempt to avoid sprawl for development. In our comprehensive plan, we have designated growth areas, one being the CPD, but that one's excluded from this particular part of the GMO. And so really we're saying we want these additional units to be within those growth areas as well, which would be more like Oak Hill and Dunstan and certain zones surrounding there that enable this type of dwelling. So that's just one specific type of clarification to make sure we're directing growth and key areas to try and preserve our rural character as a community and prevent sprawl. Next one is specific to section F. So I heard some residents talk about removing it completely. I think, a compromise for the council is really to consider putting a pause on it, at least through April, so we can figure things out a little bit better and ensure that we either establish better parameters around what section F really is and means and what's the process, and or determine whether or not section F should be completely deleted in the future. So I think that's something that we want to explore, and in order to do that, pausing any applications from coming forward until at least April 5th will at least give us some time to do a deep dive into that. And then the last one was really around adding some specificity around the type of dwelling units where, as proposed by the Downs in their initial application, they talked about this partially being mixed use. And so we want to encourage that type of mixed use development and clarify that while it can include multifamily, we also want to see some mixed use development, which would be the commercial with the residential. And then in addition, hearing some of the concerns about schools, trying to add some parameters around the number of units that would be allowed for 3 bedrooms or more, trying to keep that to a minimum to try and prevent, those types of dwelling units, which tend to be more prone to adding families that have students that could potentially go to the school. So that's some of the thought process and logic for the 3 amendments that we have proposed tonight. I don't know, Councilor Clucci or even Councilor Johnson, if you have any other things to add.
I think you explained it perfectly. So I'll accept that as a motion and I'll second. Is there any discussion? Counselor Kettering? Okay. So we are moving to amend what's on the table with the items highlighted in green. So you got to go back to the next page. Okay, so this is as amended. The green is what we are introducing with this motion.
I want to make sure we want to.
Sure.
We want to promote.
Already did.
We're already in
Yeah.
discussion. I think. I think this makes sense, and I do like, pausing F so that, counselors McGee and Anderson are gonna be doing some further work on each GMO, making changes, so there's time to get it, to get ourselves in order, so that we know what we're doing with that. So I think that makes sense, and I think adding a little further delineation also, so.
Counselor McGee?
Yeah, just a quick clarifying question on the change over to 100 dwelling units. The formula that other developers in those high growth areas use, is that are they allowed to get just a percentage of those 100? How is that going to be practically applied? Could one developer walk in a high growth area and ask for all 100? I guess would be my question.
I think yes, as written, they could. Now, they would need to go through planning and so these are issued at the time you're getting your building permit. So you need to be done planning and have all your approvals in place to have access to them.
Okay. There's 2 projects we know of that might want them. Is that correct?
That I am aware of, there are 2.
Okay.
There may be others as well. One has started down the planning process, the other has not.
Okay.
Any other, you can keep going.
Okay, all right. Real quick on the 289, I just wanted to clarify the way it's currently written. They're still going to get the 44 permits per year. The 289 is an additional exempted permit amount. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Okay. And then I guess my other.
Well,
statement-
the 44 is actual, they'll get growth permits
Mhm.
to construct those dwellings, and there's no real parameters around what they can be. These are actual exemptions, so they won't get a growth permit. They'll have access to a building permit without that stuff.
Okay. And then I guess just in general, my statement would be, I think I made it clear last meeting and during the workshop that I would have preferred the exemption process here. However, I do see that this is tackling some of the bigger questions, and I understand why some of the councils are pursuing it that way. I do, and just so anyone asks me how I feel about this, I feel like the pace here is about right for what we're looking for. Some could definitely convince me that it could be lower. Some probably could come in and convince me they could add 20 more on it. It's about right. It's within reason. So that said, I know it's coming up later on the agenda. I do appreciate the opportunity that this council is looking at, giving Councilor Anderson and I the opportunity to rework the GMO and hopefully avoid some of this future agita. And anyways, I respect what each of these council members have brought to this discussion thus far, and I appreciate that. Thanks.
Thank you. A new word for me.
Yeah.
Any other discussion on the amendment to the amendment?
Sure. I would just add that I think that these amendments to the amendment are really reflective of the conversation and the good work that we did at the workshop last Wednesday. And so I appreciate Councilor Anderson and Chairman Clucci's ability to kind of consolidate what was a 2-hour workshop and to kind of tease out what we thought were the most significant improvements that we needed to make in order to hopefully tighten some of this up and give the public some assurances and to give the council some assurances. I think that was an important piece of this. So thank you guys for your work on this.
Thank you. Councilor Hamel.
I have a question. Can I ask a point of information? So we're talking about the amendments, and will we have an opportunity to talk about the overall thing after the amendments?
Correct.
Okay, so I'm trying to just get that straight.
You want to wait
in my
until
mind.
then?
Thank you. Pardon?
You want to wait until?
Yeah, I'm going to
we
hold
take
my
action on
comments
the-
until the next
Very good.
round. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the proposed amendment? All right. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And this is on the motion to amend the main motion. And let the record show that we have 6 counselors in favor and those opposed. And Counselor Hamel is opposed to the amendment. Now we're back to the main motion as amended, which is what is currently on the screen. Any discussion? You can go now. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll make my comments now so I don't forget them, number one, and so I just sort of maybe provide a counterpoint. So I think this in many ways is trending favorably. But I have, I had initial concerns and a lot of my concerns remain. So, we had a challenging and consequential meeting on September 7th, and we had a positive outcome. And we received many emails from the public who felt that was positive, that we were working hard to solve the problem. And many people had comments to the effect that we're now beginning to understand what you're wrestling with. So I thought that was very positive, very insightful. People felt they were being heard and that the council took action based on that feedback and acted accordingly. So I think the good news is we're in a better place and trending more positively. The bad news for me is that it's not doing the one thing the public asked us to do. And that is to tap the brakes and slow the rate of growth. No matter how you look at this, that will not address that concern. And I know there are a whole variety of reasons for why the concept is good and it's a good model and that sort of thing. The tough part is, I had asked for support of supporting the amendments, and I was coming around to supporting the whole thing, with several conditions, clearing the deck of any and all prior and pending exemptions for the Downs. It sounds like that was part of this, or will be part of this. And correct me if I don't tick these off appropriately. Revoking the authority of the town manager to negotiate any exemption from the GMO for the Downs for this round. Is that is in here?
We have an action item
Those are
that's
down
going to come
below.
next to address
Okay.
both of those.
Obtaining a legal opinion, we got that. So I mean, I'm very happy we did all of those things. And then removing the community benefit criterion for approval, that is something I guess would be addressed going forward over time. So it sounds like we've really been checking all the boxes of people saying, well, Don, what's wrong with you? Why are you still not in favor of this? So I just don't think I can support the motion for the following reasons. Even after the workshop, there's in which we moved some big boulders. The biggest boulder we didn't move was the mutual benefit for the town. By any measure, the Downs has exceeded targets on both residential and commercial construction in terms of where they felt they wanted to be. They really have exceeded those, and fair play to them. Nice work. However, proving a concept is not the business of the town council. So no matter how you try to connect that with more units, that's not our work. That's the work of the developer, and we're not in that business. We're in the business of looking out for the public's interest. Funding their own projects, paying cash or using credit, that's not our job. That's their job. And assuming other risk for construction projects, also not what we do. Our job is to be fiscally responsible about the use of public funds. Plain and simple. So, I mean, sometimes there's a saying that sometimes it's not the way something, sometimes the way something is said or done is more telling, more significant than the act itself. So the problem I have is how we got here, that those things haven't really changed. There's nothing to prevent us or future council from doing the same thing again. And I reflect back on comments that Ken Johnson made when he first started on the council, and others from people that are in the planning community who deal with this all the time. And they said things to the effect that, our ordinances are like they didn't use these words, but said these are our laws, okay? And they are hard to change for a reason. And that's because they're not supposed to be changed very often. Think about, amending our constitution. It takes 2/3 of the states to ratify a constitutional amendment.
So that is a very high standard that I am afraid that we're watering down by what we're doing here. Not verifying what we're getting for what we're giving is also not fair to the public and our appropriation and use of their funds. We still, as of this very moment, do not know precisely what will be built in the downtown and what amenities will be coming forward for the town. And I'm not talking about just the downtown. I'm talking about a community center pool, land for a school. I don't know, a lot of these discussions are in progress and are nearing some stage of completion, but they're not done yet. And these are things that we've been asking since we signed the CEA back in November of 2018. So and I'm going to just try to respond to one thing Peter Michaud said, and I want to just preface it by saying that I have the utmost respect for Peter and for the Risberas and what they've taken on and what they've done. I mean, very bold. I mean, you think about buying 500 acres and developing something like this is the biggest project in the state. I mean, this is really bold, takes a lot of courage. You know, these guys are pioneers. So I really recognize that and I have a lot of respect for that. But we're in a commercial agreement with them that doesn't really say anything about philanthropy. So giving us those things are conditions that were in a commercial agreement with us that we still have not secured. And if I had to evaluate where we are as a town versus where our partner in this agreement is, it's not equal. And I think very few business relationships are equal. I have spent a lot of time consulting and making agreements with partners and with clients, and it's never equal, okay, when you have partners to an agreement. So I understand that, but so far it's still not moving along like one would expect, like I think we could and should expect. There's no legal, commercial, or business reason for the town to agree this exemption, other than the possibility that we maybe overcorrected when we revised it the last time. But it's certainly not one that would require us to break one of our laws or ordinances in order to do so. And if we do this one time with impunity and without some level of dissent, what's to prevent us from doing this again? Or another council doing this again? So I'm not supporting this. I think we need to take the time to do the work and get it right. Granting an exemption, really, puts us in a position where we're kicking the can down the road. And I know that it's going to take time for us to revise the GMO and to deal with the community benefit aspects, but it's literally like like we're kicking the can down the road and then we're actually going to build the road for us to kick the can down in the process. So for these reasons, I'm not supporting it. However, I will respect the wishes of the council and the majority on this, and will do my best to support that going forward if that's the decision, and also wish us all good luck in what's ahead of us. So thank you.
Any further discussion? Go ahead, Dan.
Real quick, I appreciate Don stepping forward and making quite a nice list of things that he thinks is missing. I can agree with a large majority of what he's discussing this evening. My vote tonight is based solely on the process. I do believe the Downs is important to this community. I believe the development that needs to occur there can and will happen in a reasonable time frame and at a reasonable pace. I'm all in favor of those things. What I'm not in favor is the way we went about this process. I've made that clear. I'm not going to beat the dead horse. My only last thing to note here is I just encourage the developer, as you guys go through the planning board process, to think about benchmarks and guidelines and work with the planning board as you develop those areas. And I say that because the last thing we want to see in this community, and I know you as developers see this too, you don't want unfinished projects, a sidewalk that goes nowhere. And so I would just encourage you to embrace some of those benchmarks as you go through that process. That's the community and the people that live there know that you do care and that you want to bring it to completion and give them the best product we know you guys can bring. So that would be it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Councilor Anderson.
Yeah, this, I think we're all kind of struggling with, the principle of the approach versus our desire to help the developer move forward with what is a very targeted ask that I think we all hopefully collectively think is something worth pursuing. So it's more, is the amendment the right path to go, or should we do the council exemption process? So if this were to fail tonight, I would say I'm willing to put in the work, the time and the effort to partner with the developer, collaborate quickly and expeditiously, hopefully learn from our mistakes, trying to work through the previous exemption to really get something very specific that we agree is a mutual public benefit that we can align and hold some accountability to. Because I do agree with what Councilor Hamel said, this is a little bit of a gimme, in my opinion, to the developer, which is for a good purpose. But at the same time, I do feel like we're leaving the residents in the town a little bit behind. And again, I don't think we need to look for anything. I don't think we need significant demands or anything at this point. I think it's just more about ensuring accountability, ensuring that what the developer has said they're going to do, putting in some performance standards and checks to make sure we get what the community is looking for. Because a lot of people tonight are here because they want this town center to happen. And while, this could be a step in that direction, there's no guarantee after this that it's going to go in a different direction. And by supporting this amendment, we're not putting any parameters in place that try and protect against that, which if we went the exemption path, I think we would be able to do that. Saying that though, I think the amendments we made tonight at least kind of show the council's commitment to revisit the GMO, to take a pause on this process and really make sure we better define it. Because again, I think just going through the process ourselves, and I'm sure for the developer as well and for the public, it's been quite confusing. And I think that's what happens when you try something different. Sometimes you have to learn quickly that it's not working and pivot. And I think one way to do that is to amend the ordinance. Another way to do that is to continue the conversations and try and get it right the second time around. So, I'm really not sure where I want to vote tonight, because again, I feel like we do have a good, I do want to see the developers move forward with this project. I would just like to work with them a little bit more directly to kind of put some parameters in place. So.
Councilor Sade.
I always say I'm not going to go last, but then I really want to hear what everyone else has to say, because it always informs my decision-making. So I wrote pages and pages of notes, and I won't bore you with them all, but I'll just go ahead and say, I'm really frustrated with the position that I'm in, which is I have been working with my committees that I am the liaison to for months on this public benefit piece. We gave our time to do a Councilor Corner Live to further the discussion on this public benefit piece. I've given a lot of time and consideration to how to bring the public along so that we can better define this component that as a council, we all admittedly were really struggling with because it was so subjective. And so for me, voting in favor of an amendment process is a huge concession, because I'm saying, I have to just own it, that I'm putting all of that public benefit conversation that I had with people on a shelf temporarily. And that does not feel good. So being in this position, I do want to again say, and I said this at first reading, I appreciate Councilor Clucci bringing this forward as something that we could talk about and have a real meaty discussion about. I think it was so critically important to us as a council to stop spinning our wheels. We weren't getting anywhere with the exemption process as it was laid out. And that's the other part of this is I don't support the exemption process as it is written at all. I think it's poorly, and this is not to knock the authors. I know I'm sitting with you. I inherited this, but I understand that it sounds like I'm being personal. Ken Johnson. But an exemption process that has a supermajority built into an ordinance that only has a simple majority to change, like that in and of itself is incredibly flawed in my thinking. And then this subjectivity of the public benefit piece is also really kicking our butts. And so, we know that this exemption process needs work. And so I think about what it is to govern and what it is to do good work. And I don't think that I could straight face follow the exemption process at this point. I think that that is bad governance at this point to say, I'm going to follow this process that is not working. We've had 11 months to get our act together and figure out how to do it better. And it wasn't until John pushed something else that people started to say, well, maybe we could make this exemption process work a little bit better. And that's not, again, all of that conversation happened organically and I'm grateful for it. But I think at the end of the day, this frustration that I have to make a choice, and tonight is the night to make that choice, whether I'm going to say publicly that I'm going to put all of this public benefit that I've worked so hard on a shelf temporarily. And I know that's going to disappoint people, in order to follow a process that I think is clear and makes sense and gives us an opportunity to do it better next time, versus following the exemption process, which I think is unreliable and just not a good process. So that's where I am.
Thank you. Counselor Johnson?
But since you called me out,
You're here.
I'm here. What we did with the first GMO rewrite pass was the exemption, and the process is flawed. I think it's obvious to everybody. And you can only try to work with something that's flawed for so long before you just say this needs to be revisited and fixed. So that's where I am with this at this time. I'll be honest with you, I am totally indifferent about a town center. However, I am going to honor the agreements that were made in writing to these developers that they could build 2,000 units in the Downs over a 20-year period. The GMO that we implemented cut them at the knees. They've done 24 this year. We've built 87 townwide because of our GMO enhancements. So it does need to be revisited and reworked, and I feel full faith and confident with Anderson and Mr. McGee to bring something forward to the council that's a little bit more flexible, that will include the public benefit, because we moved down a path with the Downs on a public benefit that included the school. The school has not made it, to my knowledge, not made a decision about where the school is going. So how can you negotiating with a partner on giving us land on the school if you don't know if that's where the school is going? So again, a fundamental flaw with it. I'm going to support this to honor the agreement with the Downs, because that's what I do. I inherit something that and that's what it is. I've inherited something, whether I agreed with it or not, I'm going to honor it, because I think that's what good people do.
Yes. Please go ahead.
Thank you. So I get to go last. No, I have been involved with this since day one. And I've seen the various permutations and agreements and disagreements and this and that and the other thing with it. And as far as public benefits, we are going to go after those, I can assure you, because I agree with you. We have to, and it is part of the our agreement anyway with the Downs. So I'm not that concerned about it. But one of the things I'm hearing tonight, which I find very interesting, and just from, this is the social worker in me, okay, sorry, is I was counting 3 people who, if, we were doing this any other way, they would agree with this. If I heard correctly, maybe I misunderstood. So I hate to have people get hung up on so-called principle of something that they are actually volunteering to go move forward and work on, because it does need to be fixed. So I just, if you think that the result makes sense, then please support this. That's all I'm going to say. And I do support this. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to support this as well. I think Ken said it very well. we cut this development at the knees when we revised the GMO. We weren't very transparent or explicit about it. Because we gave them 104 exemptions at the same time. So there really wasn't much discussion. The thought was that this town council exemption process which has no precedent, by the way, and would be the solution. But really, we didn't give it that much thought. And we've spent a lot of time trying to work through it over the past year, and it's flawed. It's put the council in a position of doing the planning board's work and us trying to extract special benefits from a development that's just trying to follow our zoning. And it's misaligned us. So that's why we're pausing 7F, so that we can not be dealing with it for a period, 6 months or so, and take a look at, is there a better way to manage developments that are at a scale that is allowed by our zoning, but are prohibited because of the GMA? Is there a better way to pace it? And I look forward to being able to work with council and the development community to see if there's a better way to go about this. But I think the fact is, the idea behind 7F, the good thing about it was it created accountability, right? So we bring any discussion about development to the council level, and if it's of significance. Honestly, I'm not totally opposed to that part, but what it spiraled into was really hard to wrap your arms around. And it really had some negative impacts on predictability and what might happen, ultimately wind up happening there. So I guess that's my explanation. There's a couple other items on the agenda that, should this pass, will, I think, close some of those loose ends and chart us on a path towards fixing what I think most of us agree is a flawed process. So with that, I'm going to call the vote. We're going to do a show of hands, and so all those in favor of the motion as amended, please raise your hand. I'm going to show that we have 5 counselors: Katarina, Cloutier, Johnson, Anderson, and Seither voting in favor, and all those opposed, please. We have Councilors Hamel and McGee opposed. Motion passes 5-2. Thank you, everybody. So now we shuffled the agenda, so I need to try to keep my head on straight. We're moving to order number 22-099. Act on the request from Crossroad Holdings LLC to withdraw its October 27, 2021 application for an exemption under section 7F of the Growth Management Ordinance, and to rescind Council Order 22-022 that authorized the town manager to draft ordinance amendments and mutually agreeable contract language with Crossroads Holdings LLC related to the exemption request. And Councilor Anderson, do you want to cue this one up? I didn't mean to put you on the spot there. I can do it. Councilor Anderson and I are bringing this one forward. It was primarily at Councilor Hamel's request.
Yeah.
And it's just to close the door on any open pending requests from Crossroads, any open authorizations for the town manager. Those are now behind us. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak to this item? And that's still the same hand up, right? Okay. Seeing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And discussion?
Yeah, I just want to clarify, I was one, a primary person who pressed for this.
Mhm.
I want to begin it by saying this was not intended as a, personal attack or affront of the town manager. I just felt that was very important for us not to have some dangling commitment out there that someday might resurface, so Tom, it's not personal, it's just business.
Councilor Anderson?
No, I think what Councilor Hamel said is correct. I feel like with what we just did with this kind of clears the deck of everything, and we're kind of starting fresh, which is, I think, really the principle of tonight, is to try and figure out how do we go from here and pause some of the things that we allowed with the exemption process and really try and clean it up. So I think this is a good housekeeping item to just kind of really hit the reset with everything. So I'm glad it's on there.
Councilor Katarina?
You can all fall over because I'm going to agree with Councilor Hammond.
She's forgiven me for that malarkey comment. Feeling well down here.
Thank you. I mean, I think it's a good, it was a good idea done, especially for the public, because nobody likes loose ends, right? So this closes the door on that, and clarity, I think, leads to confidence. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, please raise your hand, and it's unanimous. Thank you. Next is order number 22-100. Act on the request to authorize Councilors McGee and Anderson to facilitate a comprehensive review of Chapter 413, Scarborough Growth Management Ordinance, utilizing town staff and committees to advise on potential amendments for the council to consider, with frequent progress updates to the full council and a final recommendation no later than June 30th, 2023. And this is again being brought to you by Councilors Cloutier and Anderson. Do you want to cue this up?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I've been the one multiple times asking at least Councilor Clucci or Chairman Clucci if we could do something like this. So I'm really glad that we're now actually taking the time, making it official, hopefully agreeing as a council that we've learned a lot the past year. We've talked about what we've learned a little bit today. And so I think now's the time to hopefully engage the public, the development community, maybe the schools as well, and really just ensure that we're kind of going out and really kind of taking a second look at the GMO that we have and come back with hopefully some recommendations that we can bring back to the council by the time of this date to hopefully make some suggestions and improvements going forward.
Perfect. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak to this item? Okay. Seeing none, can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
And Councilor McGee.
Just a question, point of clarification on the what we just voted on earlier. There's a 6-month moratorium on 7F that ends in April, and we have this due to the council at a date afterwards in June. Wondering if those two dates should align. Otherwise, do we want to be opening up a window where an exemption request can come in before any rework on the zoning or the GMO would be ready?
I think we should align them, and it's a chicken egg. So it started with both of them at 6:30, but the reason you mentioned, we moved it to April 5th. So if you want to introduce a motion to change this date to April 5th.
I would move to amend it to April 5th, 2023.
Second, and any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Sorry.
No, I'm just saying, let's do it.
No pressure.
Sorry.
So all those in favor of changing the date to, April 5th, 2023, please raise your hand, and it's unanimous. Okay. So now we're back to the main motion as amended. Any further discussion?
Really appreciate the opportunity.
Good.
Look forward to it.
And I think we're lucky to have people with extensive expertise in this area to work on it. So, it's a good team to figure it out.
Excellent. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And it's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, guys. And now we're back to the original order of the meeting. Order number 22-092 is a 7 p.m. public hearing and second reading on the proposed amendments to Chapter 1301, the General Assistance Ordinance pursuant to Title 22 MRSA 4305, Section 4. This is a public hearing and second reading, so we'll be taking action. We had this with us in front of us at our last meeting. Don, do you want to add any explanatory notes?
I would just characterize this as housekeeping. The state does require us to have a local ordinance, which we do, and we are also required to update our minimum benefit levels, and that's what this action does. We do this every year.
And we have to do it to get reimbursed our portion of general
Yes, thank you.
assistance. So, are there any members of the public that would like to speak to this? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. And do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
I had a question. Do we have an opinion on how adequate or inadequate these figures will be for trying to address the needs that we have?
Can you do anything about it?
I don't have an opinion. I will say that the maximums do vary depending on geography in the state. So they do attempt, whether they accomplish is really your question. They do attempt to recognize the differences across their state.
And I think, Counselor, there's some avenues where you can exceed the maximum if it's an emergency, and actually sometimes situations where you're required to if it's an emergency. But it's for a time limited period. But then if they need general assistance for a longer period, they're subject to the maximum.
Thank you.
Was it not on? Oh, forget what I just said. Sorry. Any further discussion or questions? All those in favor, please raise your hand, and it's unanimous. Moving on to order number 22-095, a 7 p.m. public hearing and action on the new request for a food handler's license, a liquor license, and a special amusement permit for Sea Dog Brew Pub Scarborough LLC located at 1 Cabela Boulevard. Tom, do you want to help introduce this?
Yes, I do. This is for as the council chair mentioned, for a new special amusement license. This is the former Famous Dave's location. Sea Dogs Brewing is going to open a bit of a brew pub and restaurant. I would note, perhaps many of you noticed in the application, the applicant failed to indicate the hours that they'll operate. The town clerk did verify by telephone today that they fully intend to comply with Good Neighbor Ordinance, and we will make certain that there is an amended application that indicates so.
Are there any members of the public that would like to speak to this item? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing, and do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And discussion. I'm excited to have somebody move into that spot. It's a great location. So welcome to the town. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And it's unanimous. Next is order number 22-096, a 7 p.m. public hearing and action on the new request for a combined massage establishment / massage therapist license from Jane Taylor, doing business as Three Little Birds Healing, located at 7 Oak Hill Terrace. A massage establishment license from Oasis Wellness Partners, located at 433 US Route 1, and for a massage license from Carly Wilder, practicing at 433 US Route 1. And this is coming to us again from the town clerk.
I'll just simply offer, these are 3 new licenses. All have received their state license, which is a requirement of our local licensure process. And the clerk advises that the applications are complete.
Okay. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak to these items? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing, and do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. And it's unanimous. Thank you. Next, moving on to old business, order number 22-075, second reading on the proposed amendments to chapter 405, the Town of Scarborough zoning ordinance, section 9/0.1, utility scale solar energy systems. This is here for a second reading. We had a public hearing at our last meeting, and it's been before us several times, actually. Went through our, I believe, ordinance committee, originated out of sustainability. Do we have anybody here that would like to give an introduction?
I believe Jamie Fitch is with us online.
Jamie, we're gonna promote you if you're with us.
Oh, great.
Oh, thank you. Well, promote you on Zoom.
Okay. Oh, bummer. You had me excited there for a minute.
What do I do?
So good,
Liam
good evening. I hope you can hear me all right. I was having issues with my connectivity a little bit earlier. Again, this is updating the utility scale solar ordinance to allow solar arrays to be constructed in forested areas and on agricultural lands. The language has been updated to require that developers only cut trees that are needed for the construction, operation, and maintenance of the solar array, and they need to have a revegetation plan in place so that the areas not in use for operation and maintenance will be revegetated at the same density as was there previously. And upon decommissioning, again, revegetation needs to occur. And then for arrays on agricultural lands, no removal of topsoil can occur for the construction of the array, so that upon decommissioning, those lands could go back into agricultural production.
Very good. Thank you for that. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak to this? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
On discussion? Okay, we're worn out. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, let the record show that Councilors McGee, Hamel, Katarina, Cloutier, Anderson, and Siler voted in favor, and all those opposed. And Councilor Johnson opposed. Thank you, everybody. Excuse me. Okay. Now we're moving on to order number 22-086, act on the request to authorize the town manager to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Library Board of Trustees. This was tabled from our September 7th meeting. There's been, I think, a flurry of activity. We'll put this on the floor first. So Tom, do you want to give us an introduction?
Yeah, just quickly by way of background. By way of background, I proposed this approach really to coincide and to be a companion to the question, the real question the council was grappling, which is whether or not to place the question on the ballot. Just to provide some further detail and specificity as to the relationship going forward. Obviously, the council has taken affirmative action in that regard. I would just simply note, I still think something like this will be helpful. I don't think it's essential, but I think having clear understanding of, and expectations is always good. I would just simply note it really isn't necessary until it passes at the poll. So, so with that, I leave it to your discretion.
Thank you. Based on the,
Don, why don't we put it on the floor? So
Fine,
do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, now discussion.
sorry,
Councilor Hamel.
sorry to jump ahead, but I knew it was going to be a bit of a
You're ready.
long explanation for what. Yeah, I took the opportunity. I saw an opening when we voted and when we had the last workshop, I think it was with the library, and we voted originally on sending the matter to the public to vote on November 8th. So at that time, Tom mentioned that we're going to do an MOU, and I saw an opening. Bill Donovan indicated there was a chance for us to have some discussion to perhaps make some revisions. I then proceeded to do a very deep dive, which would be representative of someone who looks like they have a lot of time on their hands. But probably, so my apologies for that, but I think it's still work that we can use. And we've had some initial conversations, thanks to John Anderson, who's on the Library Board of Trustees, along with Nancy Crowell and Bill, to try to figure out how we can work on some of these points. The points include a couple of things, that some of which I think are very important for us. One is, confirming the limit for bonding. And this is not to say these are going to be accepted, but these are topics for discussion. Confirming the limit for bonding and the library responsibility to raise funds or reduce scope to cover additional costs. And for the library to be responsible for if there were shortfalls in funding or cost overages. Second, to set a deadline for completing private funding, including a not to exceed figure. So at least we've got a target. We know, or we'll all know kind of what date they're shooting for. And for there to be figures on scope and design as of that date, the future date. Third is, for the library and community services in some fashion to collaborate to discuss the scope of their respective programs, including things like after school care, et cetera, to seek opportunities to find efficiencies on programming and facilities and to control costs and avoid duplication. So I'm not sure, I don't have anything specific in mind, but those are roughly the three or so things. John, you can help me if I missed anything, but those are the topics that, seem to have some life. And so what I'd like to do would be to make a motion to table this for a future date to be determined, following the outcome of the ballot on November 8th.
Very good. Motion to table has been made.
Second.
Just procedurally, I think it should have a date certain. The tabling motion without an end is effectively, it doesn't go back to you. So date certain makes certain the council has to consider it once again.
Okay, thank you. I didn't know that. So we look at our calendars and get out a dart.
I
It'll be
will
sometime
give you a
after
dart. I had
after
one before the meeting. November 16th.
November 16th. Okay,
Second meeting in November after the election.
Right.
So the outcome is clear.
which may or may not be the case, depending upon the.
Well,
Well,
it-
don't worry,
vote it
we'll
down.
vote it.
we may just vote it down if the voters do not approve.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. We wouldn't want to do it before the 8th.
I don't think we need to.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay.
So motion to table to a date certain November 16th. Is there a second?
Second.
And All those in favor, please raise your hand. And it's unanimous.
And if anybody would like a special session, special one-on-one session to learn more about the fascinating aspects of value engineering, be very happy to talk with you about that.
I may take you up on that. I'm intrigued.
What do you know?
Moving on to new business. Order number 22-097, first reading and schedule a public hearing on the proposed amendments to chapter 1401, the Coastal Waters and Harbor Ordinance. This is coming to us from the Coastal Waters and Harbor Committee. I believe it has also worked in through our Ordinance Committee. Don, do you want to introduce this?
This is a result of extensive committee work with the Harbor Committee, Coastal Waters and Harbor Committee. This work was almost single-handedly directed and driven by Darren Granada, who was a former head of the state Harbor Master Commission. So he's a former harbor master in Saco. So, and he's currently a fighter captain. I believe he's resigned to us here in Scarborough. So we're lucky he's on both committees, both of our Shellfish Commission as well as the Coastal Waters and Harbor Committee. So we're happy to put this forward, and in some cases he's actually on cutting edge language that the state has asked him for help. So that's how we got here, and it was an interesting process to follow. We learned a lot about the definition of houseboats and other things.
It was very technical.
I would just add, in addition to the very technical pieces that will allow us to manage the waterfront better, there's also, I think, a very important add that relates to the pier use. There have been off and on some challenges with some of the users and cleanliness and just general housekeeping. And this, for the first time, really gives some authority to the harbor master to prosecute and find violators. I'm sure that they'll use their judgment in doing so, but I think having some definite consequences will be helpful.
So I'd like to build on that point that Tom just made. So this will give enforcement authority, greater enforcement authority to the harbor master, but it also will allow us to update and enforce how we manage the moorings, in the harbor, which has something that's, probably 20 years old in the waiting. And this is one of those things where nobody wants to voluntarily try to take on moorings, signing them, reassigning them, and then enforcing who can use them and where they should be placed. But Darren here again has done a great job in using GPS, GIS technology to have exact locations on moorings and to tighten that up. So we'll be having some bumps in the road or some waves in the water, I guess is a better metaphor, as we begin to start dealing with some level of enforcement that we haven't had there before.
Very good. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak to this? This is a first reading and we're scheduling a public hearing. Seeing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And discussion? Councilor Anderson.
Yeah, more just a comment. Because this is so highly technical, as I read it, it was hard for me to know really what the big changes were, what's good, what's bad, why we're making the changes. And so sometimes we have someone from town staff kind of write a memo that at least kind of highlights some of the big things and why. I know Jamie does a fantastic job with that, and she did a good job with the sustainability one. But when we have these highly technical ordinances like this one, it would just be good to have a memo or something along with it that just kind of really summarizes the big things that are in here and why they're important, because I think those might get discussed along the way, but when it gets to our level, I think it's a little bit lost. So it's just more of a recommendation when we're making changes to things like this. Because again, I read it made sense. I'm not some of the terms and things were so new to me in terms of dealing with this type of area. So it's just a comment about some of these technical ordinances and how maybe we can have that, follow that best practice that Jamie's done for the technical things going forward.
So we discussed that in committee, and Darren has offered to try to help us with that in terms of some Q&A when we get to the public hearing. So, and I didn't want to speak, Tom, for you in terms of staff, but he's sort of been the most logical person to do that. And he technically is a matter, I guess he's a staffer considering his fires officer role.
Yeah, we'll see if we can have a memo next time you consider this at public hearing.
Great. Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor? It's unanimous. Next is order number 22-098, act on the request to sign the warrants for the regular municipal election and the municipal charter election scheduled for Tuesday, November 8th, 2022 at the Scarborough High School Alumni Gym. Appoint the warden and warden clerk, set the hours for voter registration, and act on appointments of election clerks pursuant to Chapter 200, Article 8, Nomination and Elections, Title 21-A, Section 503, and authorize the town clerk to make any additional appointments as necessary.
Just by way of introduction and for the public's benefit, I appreciate the council's indulgence. They actually signed those warrants before the meeting. I was under strict orders from Tody to make sure that I didn't leave tonight without all seven. So thank you for that. Essentially, we've got two ballots. The first will be the election ballot that will be for seats on the town council, Board of Education and Sanitary District, and also the library ballot question, expansion project. And then the second ballot will exclusively deal with 7 different questions related to the charter change. So very much appreciate that. And again, this is approving the local ballot. There will be state ballots as well.
Thank you, Tom. Any members of the public that would like to speak to this item? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Oh, Ken. Motion and second by Councilor Johnson. Any discussion? Councilor Katarina.
Just very quickly, I want to thank people who have stepped up to run. I'm disappointed we don't have more people running in town, but we'll continue to work on that. So thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Anderson.
I am also disappointed more people aren't running, but I'm super excited that hopefully Councilor Scyther will be here. So it's mixed feelings.
I heard Councilor Scyther was disappointed that she didn't have more competition. You're formidable. You strike fear in the opponent. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you very much. We don't have any non-action items tonight, so I'll combine items 10 and 11, the standing and special committee and liaison reports, along with council member comments. Anybody have anything that they'd like to offer? Councilor Anderson.
Just a reminder that we have the next Councilor Corner Live on October 20th, and the topic is traffic and transportation. I believe it starts at 6 o'clock, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be at the Public Safety Building. So hopefully you can join or watch or whatever you would like to do, but this will be an interesting topic, and I'm hoping Councilor Scyther and I were talking earlier about some things that we might be asking you some questions to help us understand a few things before the meeting. So
Pleased to help.
Yep.
Except I don't want to be there. Pleased to help in advance.
Anything else? Councilor Scyther.
The next finance committee meeting is October 18th. We are going to be discussing the fiscal policy, and at our request, Liam has prepared a Google Sheet, which is now live for any members of the council wishing to make comments about the fiscal policy or ask questions in advance of that meeting. We have used that process in the past during the budget season, and I found it to be a good opportunity for staff to have those questions ahead of time. It makes for a more productive conversation during the meeting. And so I would ask that you respectfully populate that sheet, give the staff some time to answer your questions, especially if they're complex questions. And my only other update is candidates night. Since we're on the topic of candidates, is scheduled for next Thursday, October 13th. It will be here in Chambers. I will be remote, but I anticipate that we will have a lovely discussion amongst all candidates for school board and town council. And I really hope that even though the seats are uncontested in each race, that people will still tune in and learn what it is that matters to the people who are running. Because as we all know, sitting here, local elections matter. And so I hope that people will still tune in.
Thank you for that. And sending good questions.
Yeah, send in,
You get an honest answer, I think.
right? Great, love it.
Counselor
Forward
Hamel.
to it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if Counselor Seither is seriously concerned about having a lack of competition, we could try to encourage someone to do a late rally, a late write-in rally,
Write-in
just to
rally?
kind of make it a race. So,
There you go.
But I'm just kidding.
Please do. Okay, seeing nothing further, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you, everybody. We're adjourned. Have a great night.